You know that feeling, right? When you know exactly what you should do, but you just can't get yourself to feel it, let alone act on it. It's like there's this huge gap between your head and your heart. Well, in this explainer, we're going to explore that gap. And more importantly, we're going to look at some timeless wisdom that shows us how to build a bridge between just knowing something and actually living it.
This idea from Simon Sinek really just sets the whole stage for us. We think that if we just have the right facts, the right logic, then our work is done. But Sinek's pointing to something way deeper. The mind and the heart, they speak different languages. Winning an argument isn't the same as winning someone over, and that includes winning yourself over. And that's the big question, isn't it? This disconnect between what our brain knows and what our heart feels, it's like a fault line running right underneath so many of our challenges, from our own personal habits all the way up to global problems. It's the place where all our best intentions seem to just vanish. So how in the world do we close it?
Well, the good news is we don't have to figure this out from scratch. For centuries, brilliant thinkers, from ancient philosophers to modern-day coaches, have been wrestling with this exact problem. And they've left us what is essentially a map, a guide to finally connect our logical minds with our feeling hearts.
So think of this as our roadmap for the journey ahead. We're going to see how three fundamental pillars, attention, love, and time, all come together to form that bridge. This isn't just a random collection of nice quotes. It's a real, coherent system for living a more whole, integrated life.
So let's start with that first pillar, attention. Honestly, it's the most practical place to begin because as we're about to see, if you can't get a handle on your attention, nothing else is even possible. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus absolutely nailed this 2,000 years ago. He saw that attention isn't some resource you can just switch on and off. Nope, it's a habit. Every single time you let your focus drift, you're not just taking a little break. You are actively training your mind to be more distractible. You're building the habit of confusion.
And this idea from the legendary coach Vince Lombardi fits perfectly here. It's not about how much you practice. It's about how you practice. Repetition without focus doesn't make you a master. It just digs the ruts of your mistakes deeper. A scattered mind thinking about a problem 1,000 times doesn't get any wiser. It just gets better at being confused.
And then the abolitionist William Wilberforce comes along and takes this to a whole other level. He's basically saying that attention isn't just some productivity hack, it's a moral obligation. We are responsible for what we choose to notice. Choosing to look away, to let your attention slide, that doesn't make you innocent. It just means you can no longer claim you didn't know. So the takeaway is huge. Attention is a muscle, and what we focus on literally shapes the moral character of our lives.
Okay, so if it all starts with how we pay attention, our next pillar is about the stance we take based on what we see. And this is where things get really interesting, because we find this deep tension between two powerful and seemingly opposite ways of dealing with the world, love and force.
And you can see the conflict laid out right here. On one side, you've got thinkers like Sun Tzu and Robert Greene, who argue for a kind of hard realism. They say things like, a half-beaten enemy is just a bitter one waiting for revenge, and sometimes showing mercy is just setting yourself up for a disaster down the road. But on the other side, you have Leo Tolstoy, who insists that you can't work with people, period, without love. For him, it's not a fuzzy feeling. It's the basic structural law of how we connect.
So, which one is it? Crush the enemy or love them? Well, the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley points us toward the answer. He says the real mistake isn't choosing one over the other. The real mistake is separating them in the first place. The problem starts the moment our strategies get divorced from our values, the moment our political science gets cut off from our ethics.
And Jordan Peterson really helps us bring this home. He suggests the main fight isn't with some enemy out there, but with the one that's inside us. The part of us where anger calls itself justice or cruelty pretends to be strength. So the solution is to get the hierarchy right. Love has to be the frame, the ultimate goal. Force is just a tool inside that frame, one that should be used rarely and with extreme care. You have to ask yourself, are my actions really serving a higher purpose, or are they just serving my own ego in a clever disguise?
And that brings us to our third and final pillar, time. If you think about it, time is the ultimate context for everything. It's the container that holds both our attention and our actions, and it's what gives them all their shape and meaning.
The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote this in his private journal as a reminder to himself. The point is, we don't control how long we get to live. We don't control the circumstances we're born into, but we have total control over what we do inside that frame. So his advice is simple. Act with grace, act with goodness within whatever timeline you've been given.
I love this African proverb.
It understands that the night is real, and yeah, it can be really long. But it also reminds us that dawn isn't just a hope, it's part of the fundamental structure of reality. Now, knowing this doesn't make the night any shorter, but it completely changes how you endure the darkness.
This Spanish proverb is such a brilliant paradox. It cuts right to the core of what real urgency feels like. When something truly matters, you don't scramble and rush. You move with care, with patience, with deliberate focus. Rushing is actually a sign that you've lost sight of where you're going. And Mother Teresa just makes this point with such beautiful simplicity. Rushing doesn't get you more of anything. It actually gives you less. Less learning, less feeling, less seeing. The lesson here is so deep, our relationship with time literally defines the quality of our entire experience. Patience doesn't slow us down, it lets us fully show up for our own lives.
All right, let's pull all of this together. We started with that gap we all know so well, the one between the convinced mind and the unwon heart. But after looking at attention, love, and time, we actually have the blueprint to finally start building that bridge. So here's the crucial takeaway. Winning over the heart isn't about some single brilliant argument you have with yourself. It's a daily practice. It's the messy, imperfect, constant effort to do these three things. Pay attention like your life depends on it. Lead with love, using force only as a careful, last resort. And move through the world with that patient urgency that comes from accepting the time you've got.
And really, that's the whole project. The logic is all here, your mind is probably convinced. But you know what? That was the easy part. The real question is, what are you going to practice today to start winning over your own heart?